You represent?
My name is Clive Bishop, commonly known as Rasbishai. I am just recently elected to the post of first Vice President of the Garifuna Nation, Vincent Grenadines.
Right. So tell us a little bit about the Garifuna Nation and what's going on in St. Vincent and Grenadines.
Well, that is this present organization. I am just the representative for St. Vincent and Grenadines, the first Vice President, so I'm just taking up the post. It's not well established in St. Vincent and Grenadines yet. I have a lot of groundwork to do,
Right.
which I hope to start doing early this year when I go back home for a while. Right? Get the people sensitized, introduce what it is to them, and move on from there. But there are elements of Garifuna conscious people in St. Vincent and Grenadines who are willing to go in that direction. So I think my work will be easier with that.
Right. And I must just say, you will be receiving some support from the organization up here as well.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So how do you see the movement, and what do you see for the Garifuna people going forward?
Well, I see the movement as very important historically. I think it's timely, and I think it's most necessary because the Garifuna, as I know it, are a unique people, a unique culture. The Garifuna is historically known as the nation of people which resisted colonialism and slavery, the longest in the West, the longest. In St. Vincent and Grenadines, slavery was only introduced after the Garifuna were exiled. That was in 1797. All other islands in the Caribbean were colonized and enslaved before that time. I think the Windward Islands were the last, St. Vincent was the last of the last, because of the resistance of the indigenous people on the island.
Right. In St. Vincent, where were they located? What part of the island?
They were, well, before 1765 the British came, they were located all over the island. But they leased lands to the French. The French had a different approach. The French realized that they could not defeat the Garifuna people in war. They tried for a very long time. History shows that. There's documented evidence. The Spanish decided to stay up north in the Great Antilles. But the British, who came 100 years later than both the French and the Spanish, thought that confronting the Garifuna was better for them than confronting their own colonial people. So instead of confronting the British, the French and the Spanish north, they came to St. Vincent. They were mainly in Barbados. When they went to Barbados early in the 17th century, Barbados, for a lot of people who don't know, it's very flat, doesn't have much forest, and the people who were on Barbados actually came to St. Vincent for 6 months of the year in the dry season.
Right.
To get wood and water, and then they went back to Barbados to wood and water. So when the British came to Barbados, it was the dry season and they met no wine, so they just took over the island. All they met were huts. And Barbados is the second British colony in the Caribbean, after St. Kitts. So the British saw the land in St. Vincent were very fertile and they wanted the lands. And they always put that pressure on. 1765 is the first recorded history we have of a British admiral coming to the St. Vincent and speaking to the Garifuna chief. And because Britain had defeated France in a war in the Atlantic, they claimed St. Vincent. But St. Vincent was not the French were just renting land, leasing lands. The French grew tobacco.
They were more interested in St. Lucia. You know?
Yes, they grew tobacco. They grew short staple cotton, which they call marigoland, and they grow indigo. Those are the three main crops.
So what about the Garifuna people?
So the Garifuna people leased the French a lot of the lands,
right,
and they farmed the other lot of the lands. They grew arrowroot, which are the indigenous crop, right? They grow cassava, right? And they grow other root crops like yams, African yams and so on, sweet potatoes, and they fished a lot.
Right.
So there was no enmity and animosity between the French and the Garifuna.
Everybody had a piece of the pie.
Everybody had a piece of the pie, and there was no war. The British are the ones who introduced the war. So they claimed lands, and then the Centre Party in 1765, they made an agreement. Because what happened is that enslaved Africans used to escape from Barbados and come to St. Vincent also. And the Garifuna people give them refuge, shelter. So they came and they said, we wanted back all our people. And they said, but these people are free, you know.
How does the Garifuna people intend to impart that knowledge in our history, in our literary history, that it can be taught or other people can be exposed to it? Because a lot of that does not seem to be, it all seems to be hidden.
Yes, it is hidden.
What publications do you recommend?
I recommend Britain's Black Death by Professor Hilary Beckles. That is a recent publication, 2014, has some references there because he did a lot of research in French archives and in the British archives. I also recommend reading some of the French publications of the 17th and 18th century. The French documented a lot of work. The French built the first church in the Grenadines, the Roman Catholic Church. It was built with deaf slave labor, right? But they're also writing by people like the late Dr. Earl Kirby, who I knew personally when I was a little guy. He was the resident veterinary and scientist in Camden Park Experiment Station, but he was an archaeologist of class of note.
Is that where you got your agronomist training from?
Well, he was one of my mentors. He was one of my mentors. I used to carry his, actually, I carried his bag along the, when he went to castrate animals.
Oh,
so I saw him using a body, so early, you know.
Okay.
And he would always, after he finished doing that, he would always go and start looking for artifacts, digging up the place, looking for relics and little piece of pottery. And I said, Doctor, he said, well, this is history.
Okay.
This is how you trace the people who came before. And he was one of the people who founded the Archaeological Society of St. Vincent and Grenadines, one of the early pioneers. So himself with a gentleman called C.I. Martin wrote a book called The Black Cards of St. Vincent and Grenadines. That is also another read, right? And then there's Dr. Edgar Adams, still alive, God bless him, who is a historian and an artist and a poet. And he has written a book, one of his books. He has written several books called Linking the Golden Anchor with the Silver Chain. And in his book, that is where I found the first written reference, because it was a spoken reference before, but the written reference of the voyage in the 13th and 14th century of the Emperor Abubakar II from Mali, which came across the Atlantic, long before the Europeans.
Yeah.
And some people didn't go back, and some of these people are who are the first African people to settle in St. Vincent. So the Garifuna nation did not come out of originally enslaved Africans. Enslaved Africans joined them after. The first Garifuna were actually free Africans who came over and met the people who the British called Yellow Caribs, which are known as the Kalinago people. They came from South America. And according to Dr. Kirby, they came 300 years before the Garifuna people came.
So what's all that story about Columbus then?
When you really put all the historical facts together, Columbus sighted these islands. He sighted St. Lucia, he sighted St. Vincent, because we are mountainous islands. You would see St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Pitons, if you are the Atlantic and come in.
On any given day,
right? You wouldn't see.
You could see that to each other.
Yeah, you wouldn't see Barbados.
Right.
Barbados is flat, right? But you will see St. Vincent Mountains, that's a friend, and you'll see the Piton. So you'll see them in a passage. But if you really study the movement of the trade winds, the two winds that move across the Atlantic from the southwesterlies and the trade winds, right? They move at a certain time of the year, and these are what the ships used in those days. They didn't have steam to come across the Atlantic.
Right.
So in moving that way, there's a passage, the windward passage, where you pass when you're going in one direction, and the other passage where you pass, you come in one direction. So if you're passing between St. Vincent and Grenada, that area, you will see St. Vincent and St. Lucia easy. If you're passing higher up over Dominica and Guadeloupe, you won't see them. That is when you went back out.
Right.
So the winds will bring the ships in different directions. So St. Vincent saw Columbus saw these islands, but he never landed in any of them. But even the date they gave before the discovery of St. Vincent, which was 1498, Columbus saw it. Columbus, if you check history, Columbus was in Spain at the time. So even that documentation is wrong.
He's wrong.
He couldn't be in two places at the same time. Right?
Okay.
So he did see the islands, and they said he saw it on the day when they worship a saint called Saint Vincent. That is why he called it that, right? The historical, I must tell you that the story that the Europeans gave about how what they call the Black Caribs came to St. Vincent is erroneous. And that is what is shown clearly by the data in Professor Hilary Becker's book.
Okay.
They say that a ship carrying slaves overturned in 1675 between St. Vincent and Beckway, which are the two islands, right? And the slaves swam ashore. So I was taught that when I was in primary school. And it always, without even reading history, it always thinks that doesn't sound probable at all. So what happened to the sailors? Where they went to, the white people, how they didn't swim ashore? That was the first thing question. Right. But when you read Hilary Becker's documentation, because he went into the archives in Britain, spent years researching a lot of the information in terms of putting forward a case for reparations. And what he found is by a British colonialist from the Leeward Islands, 40 years before that, said that he saw a majority of black, what you call Caribs, among the Kalinago people, fighting in that time.
Right.
So it means to say, if people were there and fighting 40 years before the ship sank, they had to be there long before that. And the other thing is that a culture and a language doesn't, I mean, the specialists who tell you about it, the social scientists and so on, they tell you that a language takes so many years to develop. So we have to put these facts together.
Okay.
Plus the findings from Dr. Kirby, the pottery and so on, he dated some to like, even the pre-Kalinago time. Kalinago, he said, came about 800 to 900. And he said the people who came before them came about 600 to 500 from the date of the copper, the pottery found.
Okay. A lot of what you're saying there is, as we said earlier on, is not documented to a point that, you know, our people can really appreciate.
Right. A lot of it was passed on by oral tradition.
How does that spin off with CARICOM, our politicians in the islands, and the concept of a one Caribbean people? How does that fly in the face of the press? For example, Ralph Gonzalez.
I think to be fair, he is aware of that. He is aware of that because he has been one of the people who has been pushing the cause and the case for reparations, and he sees the reparations. This is the way he sees it. He sees it for the indigenous peoples, and he sees it for the enslaved peoples. And he even tried to make a case for the indentured peoples, which, you know, came after slavery was abolished. The Indians and the Portuguese who came. Portuguese came in 1848,
right.
46, and the Indians came in 1868.
So
he's making
the Garifuna people will make a representation.
Yeah, but they are asking, and they have the Garifuna people. We have our right. We're asking for to make our own representation.
You want your own case.
Right.
You make your own case.
Right. We also want the two islands, Batavia and Baliso. If you have a chance to come to St. Vincent, you must visit these. Where the Garifuna were first exiled in 1796 to be made as World Heritage Sites.
Okay.
And not be sold to any private person. Because the record shows that 5,400 and a few Garifuna people. Male, female, and children, adults and children, were exiled on that island. The island doesn't have any running fresh water, right? And they were left there for more than a year. You know, they were well, exiled, expected to die. And in 1797, the British took them from there, and when they took them from there, it was only 2,400 odd were alive.
Wow.
And they took them to Rotten Island, which was then British Honduras, which became Honduras. And even there, the conditions were there. But today, out of that, less than 2,500 people, they have an international population of almost 700,000.
What's the population in St. Vincent of Garifuna?
St. Vincent Garifuna people, it's difficult to say, but people of African origin in St. Vincent are about 85–86%. The others are mixed race.
Right.
A little Portuguese, little Indian.
And they're all scattered all over the place.
They're scattered all over the place.
Now,
what happened is in 1773, this is the first map, official surveyed map that was made of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Can't remember the name of the gentleman now, but I have one in my room. I'm not really a big one, right? There was a list after 1755. The British came, they got lands, and the Garifuna were allocated certain areas. But the British saw that when the Garifuna were allocated, especially in the north, east of the island, the land was very flat and very fertile. So they wanted to sugarcane. So they stored up a disturbance. And they won that disturbance because they had cannons and so on. And they then took the Garifuna and carried them a little further north. And then in 1795, after Chief Judge of Château was defeated and after the Garifuna fled, and the others they surrendered and they were taken into that exile. They banished them north to the extreme north of the island on both the eastern side and the western side. So they carried them. There was a river, famous river called the Grenadines Garifuna Homeland, which appears, the water appears at a certain time of the year and disappears at a certain time. Some of the volcano. They carried them north of that on the eastern side, and they carried them north of the Walibu River on the western side. Now, my grandparents are from the Walibu side.
Okay.
So in 1902, when the volcano erupted, they were just at the foot of the volcanoes. And my grandmother told us the story. They were farming the day because farming and fishing were the way of life. Some of them were craftsmen, like they would build boats. Garifuna people are very skilled in building boats. Right. And I'm sure you know that the indigenous people which are very skilled in building
canoes.
Right. And the trees were there, a certain type of trees.
Yes. Yeah,
and she said, exactly. She said she was 13 years old, just about going 14. And she was in the mountain with other people in the garden, and they heard the rumbling. And they just saw the smoke, and people started communicating with each other through drums and shells to get out. Some people, when I was small, you could still see the burn on their feet where they tried crossing the river too late and the river water was hot. So they got scalded. But they came from that area, and the British took the area that I was born in called Camden Park. It was an estate. They took it from, they nationalized it from a gentleman who had a Scotsman, and they settled the people there. Okay. So the people settled there, Camden Park, Clive Valley, Kittels, very close communities, in 1902, 1903. But I remember certain features that our grandparents used to do. They always had what you would call it a kudme. Right. Swap labor.
We still have that.
We still have a bit of that, yes. And don't ever lose that. Eh?
I hope
that is an economic, you try to be a trade guy. Yeah. That is an economic trait which today is so relevant to beat subsidized products coming from the West.
Yeah, we still have that kudme.
Right. It's still prevalent in certain indigenous communities in the
Okay, well, I guess
Yeah.
we have to touch a base when it comes to St. Vincent.
Definitely so, and you're most welcome to come. I mean, you have been historically our most welcome and closest neighbors. You
And
know?
we will continue to be that way.
Solutions come to St. Vincent's Day.
Yes, you